Oh boy, Sliders is a show that I both loved and then hated. It started off so well with a great cast of characters and an absolutely amazing premise. Traveling from one world to another where there'd be some deviation in each alternate universe's history, which naturally led to a different present day on each different Earth that our main cast traveled to.
Sliders is the story about the most gifted and brilliant kid in the class.
Oh, right. No, sorry.
That's right.
That's okay.
Develops a device for opening a portal into a parallel universe. Into it, he takes his girlfriend, his professor, and inadvertently scoops up a soul musician on his way to sing the national anthem at a ball game. Yes. Once in a parallel universe, we cannot, for various reasons, get back to our own. And therein, our adventures begin.
That was really good.
Yeah.
I've always loved alternate universe stories as I tend to be fascinated by things that are somewhat familiar but also slightly off. Probably explains why I also get into slight variations of things, but I probably don't need to psychoanalyze myself here. Tracy Tormé was a writer who did a lot of sci-fi, like the movie Fire in the Sky, the Intruders miniseries, and of course on Star Trek The Next Generation. But he was also a writer for Saturday Night Live from 1982 to 83, which probably explains a bit the comedic tone Sliders would have from time to time. Tormé came up with the idea for the Sliders series when he saw the pilot that never went to series for Disney's Fluffy Dogs, which was about a group of dimensional hopping dogs trying to find their home world again.
The door!
You think this is the door back home? Be ready to close it fast.
There's something y'all should know. I can't swim. I found another door. Quick, Stanley, the key.
Okay, that's not really how Tormé came up with Sliders, but it's a bit strange that that show really happened. The real story was Tormé was waiting around to have a meeting with Robert K. Weiss about a different project.
And there was actually a magazine with two Earths side by side on the cover of the magazine. And I had been reading a book about George Washington. There was a moment in the Revolutionary War when George Washington was about to be shot by a bunch of the British, and they all fired at him, and when the smoke cleared, he was still on his horse. And the whole point was that one of those bullets been well aimed. He's dead. There's no American Revolution. I walked into Bob's office and said, I've got this weird idea for a TV series.
So Robert Weiss helped develop the series with Tormé. Weiss's background was in producing a lot of comedy, like the original Police Squad series and the Naked Gun films. And he also had some crossover on SNL, working on The Blues Brothers, Tommy Boy, and some other movies that weren't quite as good. But this probably also explains why Sliders like to have that balance of comedy and drama earlier on, which apparently was something they really had to fight the network on.
Basic kind of physical differences, but also the cultural differences. Use them both for drama and for humor.
Well, we really sold the show with the idea of doing a lot of it humorously, and I know that that wasn't easily accepted by the network because they thought science fiction shows aren't really supposed to be funny.
Not thinking sci-fi was supposed to be comedic is especially asinine coming from Fox, who, you know, was airing this little show called The X-Files at the time, which, as far as I recall, liked to do the comedy episodes once in a while. But hey, that's far from the last dumb thing Fox would say or do in relation to Sliders.
Unfortunately, you know, the network is used to sort of doing things a certain way, and it was always a fight and always a struggle.
So yeah, this unfortunately was a show that got completely wrecked by the network interference from Fox, to the point that series creator and showrunner Tracy Tormé threw up his arms and left, leading to it instead being led by David Peckinpah, who made some rather unfortunate choices that only hastened the downward trajectory the show was on. But before Tormé left the series during season 3, he did try to get together with David Peckinpah to discuss the characters and stuff on Sliders, but kept getting blown off, which would seem to show that his priorities had been left on an alternate universe. In fact, Peckinpah told Tormé that the network had stated that the show was too cerebral. So it was time to get rid of any of those nasty plots that made you think, and just have the characters fight with each other.
Go on! Can't you see he's trying to protect you?
If he's gone too, there's nothing left to protect.
Oh, save the self-pity.
Being told the too cerebral thing by Peckinpah, though, was apparently the exact moment Tormé decided to slide off his own series. And of course, none of this was helped by the show being moved over to the Sci-Fi Network for its last 2 seasons.
Sci-Fi Channel's original production of Sliders will break all the rules. Got wild stories, non-stop action, and amazing special effects. Where a lot of the show's original alternate history premise was lost, as was the cast, as only one series regular was left by the time the show ended. Now that we're finally home on the Sci-Fi Channel, Sliders is going to have the opportunity to make this series truly remarkable.
Wade?
Truly remarkable.
Every time an actor left the show too, it tended to be an unnecessarily mean and horrible exit for their character. These horrible character endings have largely been attributed to David Peckinpah, particularly with one that is the lowest moment the series ever had. At least though with one character exit, there's a bit of a loophole left open due to an unresolved plot thread, which we shall discuss more once we get there. The original core group consisted of Jerry O'Connell as Quinn Mallory, a college student genius who comes up with the technology which creates the dimensional vortex so that everyone can become Sliders. Sabrina Lloyd as Wade Wells, Quinn's friend who had stronger feelings for him, with her and Quinn kind of flirting around the idea of being together but never quite getting there. She kind of grows past that though, as sliding really allowed Wade more opportunity than she is getting living a regular life on Earth Prime. Well, originally anyway. Clavant Derricks as Rembrandt Brown, a singer who is past his prime but was potentially about to make a bit of a comeback when he accidentally gets brought along for the sliding ride. Remy tended to be the character who would bring the most comedic relief, but Clavant Derricks would absolutely bring it too when it came to the serious bits. And he ended up being the only anchor for the show. He said he mostly stayed on the series for the fans, and he was certainly giving his all, even though the show itself wasn't by the end. And then we've got John Rhys Davies as Professor Maximilian Arturo. He was Quinn's teacher, who was a little upset that Quinn was the one who ended up turning sliding from science fiction to science fact, but he also had a fatherly relationship with him. There'd be some quite humorous moments from Arturo's rather pompous moments, but he'd also show great passion for his fellow sliders, much like how John Rhys Davies would show great passion for the show itself.
A lot of times his mouth would get him in trouble.
When he had problems with the script, everybody knew about it. And I'll tell you, man, we were in read-throughs and John would bang his fist on the table and go, "This is absurd, this show could be so good, why don't we do this and do this and do this?"
While season 3 was rather messy from its beginning, the departure of John Rhys Davies really was a big turning point for the worse.
John himself was the foundation. And when we lost John, I think deep down in our hearts we knew that it was the beginning of the end.
And really, his replacement, Maggie Beckett, played by Kari Wuhrer, was a horrible substitution. Maggie was mostly an annoying character who just argued with everyone, but she did improve a little bit after Wade left the series, because after that, her character basically turned into Wade. John Rhys Davies was also the one who saw great potential in Sliders' concept, which is why he got very upset when the show went from exploring worlds which had alternate histories to what movie can we do a rip-off of? Apparently, the last straw for him was when he walked into the writer's room and saw them watching Species and wondering which bits they could nab from it.
We're delivering a show that will exceed their expectations.
John Rhys Davies was right, though. Sliders had an amazing premise and could have been a greater franchise had it not been constantly messed with. So just hang on a sec here. I'm gonna slide to the world where Sliders was allowed to finish its run properly and see how big it became.
Hey, Slide Hards. It's your boy Quinn Mallory.
We can probably have a big get-together with all the other Slide Hards at SliderCon in Las Vegas.
Where's Wade? Where's Rembrandt? Where's Professor Arturo and that other girl who unceremoniously replaced the professor? And some other characters that I'm not that familiar with.
And the rest.
I like to think of Sliders as sort of like Quantum Leap meets The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, Sliders, at least how it began, really was kind of a spiritual successor to Quantum Leap. And it's kind of extra funny now that Jerry O'Connell describes Sliders as a mix between it and The Wizard of Oz, as Clavant Derricks went on to play the Wizard in the Broadway version of Wicked. Unfortunately, too, there was a bit of a misstep before the series really got that bad, too.
They wanted a bad guy in the show. We didn't have a bad guy.
The damn Cro-Mags.
Cro-Mags. Who the devil are the Cro-Mags?
I will say that the first time the Cro-Mags showed up, it wasn't completely horrible, and had they been a smaller arc that got wrapped up, it could have been fine. But really, these stupid things just outstayed their welcome, and they relied on them just way too much in the Sci-Fi Channel seasons.
It was cooler to deal with sort of the human element of going to different universes than just having like a set of bad guys in like freaky makeup.
I will see you on the other slide. And I'll see you idiots later.
A lot of the email and a lot of letters we got back from the audience was that, yes, thanks, but no thanks. Let's go back to where we were.
Another thing that worked so well with Sliders earlier on was that they would show you some of the alternate world versions of characters you'd seen before, which helped sell the whole premise of the show. Unfortunately, though, they moved production of the show from Vancouver to LA during season 3. So they didn't have a lot of the same actors around to play bit parts like that, and then most plans to have characters reoccurring in the later seasons kept falling through. Some characters even meant to show up again, like the female double of Quinn, never did because of Fox being a bag of dicks and saying they didn't think she was attractive enough. Oh. So, Fox was just absolutely toxic to the show by season 3, and then Sci-Fi Channel was, well, Sci-Fi Channel.
In the Sci-Fi Channel's new Slider series, our characters even get to explore their own inner dimensions.
Was Jerry O'Connell being held at gunpoint to say these things?
Started telling.
Once the actors have done their part, the show is far from complete. Weeks of post-production are still needed before you get to the fantastic finished show. The fantastic finished show.
Sci-Fi Sliders is so great. I love it more than anything. Mark Scott Zickery was brought on during the switch over to the Sci-Fi Channel as an executive producer and writer. He was excited to try and get the show back on track with the whole alternate histories thing and off of the movie ripoff crap season 3 got stuck on. Zickery in fact wrote by far the best episode of Sliders in the Sci-Fi Network era, World Killer, which was really the closest the show ever felt to being in the season 1 and 2 era again. Unfortunately, Zickery ended up running into a wall named David Peckinpah, who would end up changing a lot of Zickery's plans for the series. For example, he wanted to have the stupid plotline where Quinn and his brother Colin were the last sons of Krypton be a fake out and Colin to actually be a Cro-Mag spy. But this eventually got vetoed by Peckinpah. So Zickery left after season 4 because, as he said, he had had enough of working with David Peckinpah. It's really crazy that so many times during this series that the people who dared to care were driven off of it. But at least the man who apparently delighted in giving one of our main characters one of the most horrible exits in history stayed on the show and made sure it never got too cerebral. Now, I don't want to say that every bad thing that ever happened to Sliders was David Peckinpah's fault, because Fox and Sci-Fi did their fair share of fixing what wasn't broken. But you could really tell that the passion behind the series was gone.
Special effects are an essential part of what makes Sliders exciting.
I love how he cannot say any of these things during the Sci-Fi Channel making of Sliders special with any kind of conviction. And really, when I think of great special effects, I don't tend to put Sliders all that high on the list. I love Sci-Fi Channel Sliders so much that I'm leaving after one season of it. And that kind of shows where the priorities were being misplaced in this era.
I mean, sure, the special effects aided Sliders, but it was a character-driven show at one point.
Character-driven shows, I think, are much stronger, much deeper. With television, I think that's the formula. I think if you have character-driven shows, the audiences tune in more.
If you're caring more about the special effects, which I mean on a Sci-Fi Channel show aren't going to be blowing anyone away, except maybe in an alternate universe where they gave more of a crap, then your cast, you're missing what is actually going to keep the audience invested in the show. A kind of important thing about having a really character-driven show, though, is having the characters on the show, which, of course, Sliders did not by the end of it. Save for poor Rembrandt, who is the only one worth caring about by that point.
And some other characters that I'm not that familiar with.
But hey, at least we got wonderful things in the last season, like a Quinn Mallory who's not really Quinn Mallory.
Who the hell are you?
I'm Quinn Mallory.
Okay, I've had enough of this.
But we'll get deeper into all that episode by episode, so join me next time as we look at the movie-length pilot for Sliders.
Folks so skittish about a little rain before. Oh, it's acid rain world!
It was at that point you realized the Sliders were too stupid to live anymore.